Save Africa.
In Ethiopia, at its capital, Addis Ababa, Emperor Haile Selassie, who sent 4 members of his Air Force to join Harambee Africa, speaks of the responsibilities of youth. The future prospect of a country depends upon its young people. The integrity and the well-being of the whole of Africa can be preserved only when its youth, with unceasing effort, has developed an acute sense of discrimination, thus adopting what is only essential and constructive, and discarding that which does not contribute to the goal and aspiration of the peoples of Africa. The youth of Africa must show to the world that they are determined to use the best of their knowledge to bring about continuous progress and the common goal of unity and greatness as a tangible objective of the African peoples.
Good night, everyone. This is the cutting edge right here on IRE FM. This is Roger Asphalt, holding the fort for Mutabaruka. Yet again, putting on the cultural hat and trying to fill the shoes of the legendary one himself, who is absent this week. As well, we say we try to fill our shoes where that man don't wear shoes. So, it's a big shoes to fill. So we're here. We're going to keep you company until 2 o'clock. It's a journey as usual. If you notice, the song we start off with, Zimbabwe. And this is one of the biggest talking points where African consciousness is concerned right now globally. What is happening down there in Zimbabwe. And we have a little feature we're going to play after the break. We're not going to take the perspective of the Western media. So we're not going to play anything that, is going to shape in a negative way towards the regime in Zimbabwe, because we know how the Western media stay and how they try to shape the minds of people. So we're going to take it from a different perspective. We're going to take it from, what do you call it now, the Al Jazeera kind of perspective, the African kind of perspective, the reporting from that kind of perspective. So we have a little feature we're going to play right after the break. So I want to say, good night again. It's November 15, 2017, the 11th month of the new year. You notice how time flying? I want to say, Sandra, we'll keep you company tonight, and she'll keep my company too. And we're going to join you. And we're going to do every little thing for keep the journey and keep the flame alive in terms of the black consciousness. Because this is a black conscious African program. And we're just here to represent.
IRE FM wishes to advise that the views expressed on the cutting edge are not necessarily those of the company.
Welcome back to the cutting edge. Roger Asphalt here, along with Sandra, keeping your company until 2 o'clock here on the cutting edge. So, as you say, the biggest talking point in terms of African consciousness now is what is happening in Zimbabwe. And overnight, there was a military kind of takeover in that country, and we don't know, say, the Western world is watching, and is watching with a great deal of excitement, because this is a man that, they want to see the back of. That is, we're talking about the president of Zimbabwe, Robert Mugabe. So we have something here. It's not the Western way. So you're not going to hear from the regular TV networks where it just slant one direction. So we're going to take a more balanced approach, and we'll go Al Jazeera style. So this is a report on what is transpiring currently in Zimbabwe.
Just what is going on in Zimbabwe? An extraordinary day in Harare, which at times has looked like the very end of President Robert Mugabe's 37 years in power. The situation's been confusing to say the least, but we know definitely the military stepped in. It took over state media, it delivered addresses to the nation, but also has consistently denied that a military coup was in process. Then in the afternoon, some clarity about Mugabe himself. South Africa's President Jacob Zuma released a statement saying he'd spoken to the president and that he was confined to his home, but otherwise fine. But Wednesday's events suggested not all was fine. Troops in armoured vehicles, well, they'd been out in the streets of the capital, Harare, since Tuesday. Military vehicles blocked off roads close to Parliament. They positioned themselves outside the headquarters of the ruling ZANU-PF party. There were explosions and gunfire heard in northern suburbs, including shots apparently near Mugabe's private residence. The troops then entered the headquarters of the national broadcaster, the ZBC. They read out a statement by a general on air insisting no military coup, and that President Mugabe and the First Lady Grace were, quote, safe and sound. As I say, it's been quite an extraordinary day. Haru Mutasa has been live on Al Jazeera all day about it. Haru, I remember broadcasting from that very spot where you are right now about 9 years ago when I think Robert Mugabe came the closest to being democratically toppled. What we're seeing now, though, I mean, it's hard to believe almost.
Exactly. Zimbabwe's already known one leader since 1980, and that man is President Robert Gabriel Mugabe. When you speak to Zimbabweans on the streets, they're surprised this has happened, they're shocked, some are saying they never thought it would ever happen. The streets are quiet. It's calm in the capital, Harare. It got busier throughout the day. More people came into the city centre. It's going to get dark soon, so people are heading home. They are cautiously watching what will happen next, because no one really knows right now. People are just taking precautions. The war veterans had a press conference earlier in the day, and in that press conference they said that they support what the army did. They say they're happy they've taken back control of the ruling ZANU-PF party, and they're insisting they want the president to be fired as head of state and as leader of the ruling ZANU-PF party. The army is still calling the president head of state and commander-in-chief. But this is uncharted territory for Zimbabweans, many watching, waiting to see how things play out. It has been an interesting week. An uneasy calm in Harare. This after confusing scenes on the streets of Zimbabwe with a night of unrest as military vehicles rolled in. There were also reports that soldiers were seen loading ammunition. These developments followed a warning on Monday that the military would step in if the sacking of candidates they favor within the ruling party didn't stop. A statement was read by soldiers on state radio. This is not a military takeover, and things will return to normalcy.
Comrade R.G. Mugabe and his family are safe and sound, and their security is guaranteed. We are only targeting criminals around him who are committing crimes that are causing social and economic suffering in the country in order to bring them to justice.
But this has sparked fear of a military coup.
Even now, with all the confusion, we do know that the army inserting itself this way and running the country and telling the people what to do and what to believe and handling the news, taking over the broadcaster, those are very unusual. In other countries, we call those things a coup.
Zimbabwe Army Chief Constantino Chiwenga warned earlier this week the military could step in if party purges didn't stop. But Chiwenga was quickly accused of treasonable conduct by the ZANU-PF in a statement. One of the first announced casualties is the finance minister, who the army stated they had detained. Despite the military emphasizing the president and his wife are safe, these look like troubled times ahead. The regional body SADC says is concerned about developments happening in Zimbabwe. President Jacob Zuma, the president of South Africa, is sending a special envoy to the country. These officials will meet with the Mugabe, as we told. They'll meet with members of the army and some people within the ruling party to mediate. We don't know what that means. Could it mean that maybe they'll try to get all sides to work together and have a peaceful Zimbabwe? Or will they try to negotiate some kind of dignified exit package for President Mugabe and his wife, Grace Mugabe? The military have said that they will only return to the barracks once they are satisfied that all those criminals that they're calling or alleging or saying they're trying to destabilize the ruling party have all been arrested. No one knows how long that is going to take. So it is interesting times in the country. Zimbabweans who have to live here go through this, concerned, hoping that there won't be any violence.
Interesting times, understatement that is. Haru Mutasa, at Haru Mutasa on Twitter. She's been tweeting a lot today. Do go and have a look to keep up to date with this story. Okay, so that's what's been happening in the last well, coming on for 24 hours, but this story does go back a little bit further. Bernard Smith looks at this now, the political background that has led to a military intervention.
The stakes have just got higher in the battle for who will succeed Zimbabwe's 93-year-old president. Last week, Robert Mugabe fired his deputy. As he spoke, his politically ambitious wife, Grace, was by his side. President Mugabe said Vice President Emerson Mnangagwa had started consulting witch doctors to find out when I was going to die. The news was delivered to a crowd of supporters from the youth wing of the ruling party ZANU-PF. The youth wing is loyal to Mrs. Mugabe. She's the most prominent face of a faction called G40. But the man pushed aside was honing his political skills when Grace Mugabe was still in high school. Mnangagwa is nicknamed the Crocodile for his ability to survive. He's closely aligned with the military and a veteran of the struggle against British rule. That counts for a lot in Zimbabwe.
Grace Mugabe was probably learning very quickly, but not fast enough. You know, she would lose her temper and she would be screaming at these people. This goes back to 2014 when Joyce Mujuru, who was vice president then, was jumped. And Emerson Mnangagwa, the guy who was jumped, but is now back, was with that, you know, with Grace. So these are very, very fluid, shifting, factional fights going on.
The military's intervention comes as Zimbabwe faces another economic crisis. People sleep outside banks because there's a chronic shortage of currency. They want to be first in line for restricted access to their money. Unemployment is estimated to between 60 and 90%.
This has created an economic collapse because the last time that Mugabe was really under threat was towards the end of the 1990s. And then the so-called war veterans pushed him into a corner and he said, well, I need your support. Go and get 20% of the land and I'll go forward with it. And, you know, that created an economic crisis.
As Robert Mugabe has aged, the struggle for his successor has intensified. But all the while, everyone has been careful to publicly show deference to a president who is held in high regard by most Zimbabweans. Grace Mugabe and her G40 faction does not command the same respect. Now that the army has stepped in, that faction may have gambled and lost.
All right, time for some analysis with Thembisa Fukure. He is a researcher with the Al Jazeera Center for Studies, joining us via Skype from Addis Ababa. Nice to see you, Thembisa. Let me just read you a couple of questions quickly from some of our viewers on Twitter and Facebook. Eric is saying, is this coup effective? Has the military deposed Mugabe? Austin on Facebook is saying, why is Mugabe in hiding? And this is the real conundrum here, isn't it? The fact that there's apparently no coup, but Mugabe is effectively under house arrest.
Yeah, that's true. I think the army is very careful in calling this a coup because they know that if they do that, that's going to invite some kind of criticism from both the South African developing community, which is the SADC, and the AU, who have in the past come out very clearly to say that they will not support nor work with any government that comes into power through a coup. So they are extremely careful in how they name this process, which is currently taking place at the moment. We know for sure that Robert Mugabe is under house arrest. Depending on which side you're sitting on, most people have called this a coup, but the authorities in Zimbabwe still insist that this is not a coup. Of course, this is also meant to keep calm the international reaction, particularly the markets, regarding the current political situation in Zimbabwe.
Why now, Thembisa? 37 years into Robert Mugabe's rule, and we have to point out that he does have very strong popularity as well at home, despite everything that's happened in Zimbabwe. But, I mean, why has it taken this long, and why now?
Well, I think it had a lot to do with the firing of Emerson Mnangagwa, who was the deputy president of Robert Mugabe for a very long time, and the ambitions which have been manifested by his wife, Grace Mugabe. Many people, particularly those on the faction of Emerson Mnangagwa, felt that if Mugabe does go to the next general election, or it might prolong the Mugabe dynasty's domination of the...
All right, this is the cutting edge here on IRI FM as we continue to play this feature here on the cutting edge. Of course, we're looking at the Zimbabwe situation. And we are trying to get a balanced report. We're not taking from the perspective of the Western media. This is more from the Southern African, Southern African, Eastern African, that side of the world, objective perspective. So we're just going to wrap up this little feature from Al Jazeera.
And I think they are trying to stop that.
Right. Well, this is actually just quickly a final question again I've got from Twitter. Well, quite a few people actually asking us if the leadership would stay in his family, his wife, his son, or is this looking like the end of the Mugabe name, as it were?
Yeah, well, it would have set a very wrong precedence. We are seeing something similar in South Africa. There's a proposal by certain members of the ANC that Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, who is the ex-wife of Jacob Zuma, some claim she's still married to Jacob Zuma, wanting to take over after Jacob Zuma leaves the presidency of the ANC next month. So this would have indeed set a wrong precedent. It's something that is common in African politics, and I think the attempts or the reaction of the military in Zimbabwe will be remembered in history as having prevented something extremely detrimental in African politics.
Tembisa, good to talk to you. Thank you. Glad you could join us. Here is Leah to take us through online reaction, which I imagine has been huge today.
Yes, huge would be an understatement, like you were saying earlier with Haru, because this is easily the biggest conversation in Africa at the moment. There's been hundreds of thousands of people sharing content, and a lot of it is confusion as to what is really happening on the ground. So people in Zimbabwe took to social media to try and figure that out. Hundreds of thousands of people, like I said, are tweeting and sending out conversations that are spreading across the continent. You see a lot of activity in Kenya, Nigeria. South Africa is also very much contributing to this conversation too. Some are very much against what's unfolding. Arthur here from Uganda says that he wants another president for Zimbabwe, but he doesn't support using violence and armed forces to oust Mugabe. Others, like Pastor Evan Maurire from Zimbabwe, said that in a Facebook Live with thousands of views that it's time to speak up, but that we need to remain calm.
As citizens, servants of Zimbabwe and friends of Zimbabwe, this is not a time for us to be silent, and it's not a time for us to be hiding or to be quiet. It's a time for us to stand up. It's a time for us to speak up. It's a time for us to stand together as well.
Some of our viewers in Zimbabwe, including a human rights lawyer, sent us their views on what's going on. Take a listen.
At last,
The new Zimbabwe is going to be in favor of all citizens of Zimbabwe.
The situation in Zimbabwe is very tranquil, but at the same parallel to that is capture of the state by the military, as we have seen from different channels of the 40 state. But what is more fundamental at this juncture is the escalation of the conflict, which is high likely if there are no strategic interventions by different partners within our whole body politic. As young people, as Tajamuga, we urge people to remain peaceful.
I think there's a sense of hope among some Zimbabweans that this intervention may bring about the type of transition that Zimbabweans have been longing for a very long time. I think the great concern, though, is that it could open up Zimbabwe to extended military rule, or perhaps even just install a government which is more of the same.
All right, so that was a feature from Al Jazeera on the current crisis in Zimbabwe. Of course, you know, they got them independence 1980. And of course, the song we started off this evening with was Bob Marley's Zimbabwe, because he was a special guest down there them time there. So it's from that time Robert Mugabe has been president until now. And of course, Western media and countries, you know, Western countries, they have done their best to paint a negative picture on Mr. Mugabe. Of course, every country have them politics and every country have them issues to deal with. So one of the good things is that, you know, is his within the country itself, starting out itself. Of course, you know, you're going to hear, and of course, people will have their own views that, you know, what is happening now is Western influenced. And the man who, you know, is behind this, they say, is that former Vice President Mnangagwa. Yeah. You know, just a couple of weeks ago, he was removed from his Vice President's post and paving the way for Mr. Mugabe's wife to be successor because, you know, time running out on Mr. Mugabe now. And it's just one big thing down there. But Zimbabwe is one of those countries that has been the beacon of African redemption and, you know, African liberation. And, you know, we're not really pleased about what is happening, but countries like those have to deal with them internal politics as is happening now. But we take anything what the Western media say with a grain of salt, you know, so that's why we're not touching anything where the Western media has to say about Zimbabwe at this time. So this is the cutting edge here on IRA FM. We have our own local issues to deal with too, you know, because we have to talk about this NIDS thing, National Identification System. We want to get somebody to help us, you know, as to what is really coming to us here as Jamaican people. We're going to talk to that person shortly because that is what we are facing now here in Jamaica. We usually hear, when we're a little boy, I grew up about Mark of the Beast, a lot of people says, this is it. And the reason why people say so, because a lot of countries have rejected the system that is being implemented and is to come. So somebody gonna help us, you know, shed some light on what is to come and how this will impact the Jamaican people. Cutting edge here, IRA FM. Yeah, man, African connection, man. This is the cutting edge here on IRA FM. You know, we'll go until 2 o'clock. We're there with you, keeping your company. You know, it's a journey. It's a journey towards consciousness, and it's a journey to keep the African revolution in shape, in line, in focus. So, as you know, and in recent times, there has been a whole national debate regarding what is to come, the National Identification System. And of course, it was passed in Parliament recently. The government is rather insisting that Jamaicans will not be denied critical services if they do not possess a national identification card when a new national registration regime takes effect. So they had a Senate meeting recently. They had 168 amendments to the bill, and there was strong debate, and eventually the government passed it way in the night, sometime around 9:13 p.m. on Monday night. Yeah. So what is the National Identification System? Well, according to the government website, it's a national database for all Jamaicans, providing each citizen with a unique national identification number. NIDS is a secure and reliable way to verify a person's identity. Personal information as well as biometric data in the form of a fingerprint for each individual will be collected and stored in the national database alongside their unique number. Persons will be required to use their national ID number when they are transacting business at any government office. Eventually, a multi-purpose smart card will be used along with the number. So there are a lot of discussions, a lot of debates, and also a lot of resistance to this new national identification system to come on stream. The Jamaica Coalition for Healthy Society have some issues as well. I'm going to speak with somebody who is affiliated to the Jamaica Coalition for Healthy Society. In fact, he's the president of Love March Movement, and they are part of the Jamaica Coalition for a Healthy Society. And we are pleased to join now Miss Dr. Daniel Thomas, the president of Love March Movement. Good night, sir.
Yes, good night, good night.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, good to have you. NIDS, National Identification System. I just want to get this out of the way. Is this something you are against?
Well, the National Identification System, as it stands, has a number of flaws, right? No, we are not against there being a national ID for East Jamaica. Let me just make that clear from the outset. What we are concerned about is a number of adjoining laws and adjoining systems surrounding the ID that are being put forward that we're not hearing that much about, that the government is not speaking up enough about, so we can know the strings that are attached to this national ID. We agree with the concept of a national ID and, with the basic thing that you just read, which is really the information that has been made available to the public, that, we want to streamline our identification process so it's more, easily verifiable. But there are some details that have been left out of our public discussion.
Yeah, let me ask you this,
really
Let me ask
were
you this.
discovered during the debates in Senate and in the lower house, which we have serious concerns about. And I want to highlight two of them mainly for you.
All right, well, let me ask you this quickly, though. What could be some of the strings attached?
Right, so the two main issues that we have is, one, that what they're saying as it stands right now is that this would be a compulsory national identification card that each Jamaican must get. You would not have a choice as to whether or not you want to disclose the information that they're requesting of you. You must get it or else. That's the kind of attitude that is coming along with the national identification system. Get it or else you will be denied all government services. You will essentially, you'll be denied access to goods and services as well. So there are significant social penalties, but then there's even a fine. Senator Kamina Johnson Smith said that after a while they would put in place a fine that would penalize persons and essentially tag those who disagree with this whole system as criminals. After a while, the sum was $100,000, and that has been amended. I'm not sure what that one on the 168 amendment included the change of the sum, but there is still a fine of a substantial amount of money that would be adjoined to this thing. Now, that is of concern. That is of concern because you have people who are of different beliefs and backgrounds, and we are in a democratic system where we normally would have an allotment for persons who would, say, for instance, this is the mark of the beast, or, for instance, that they are just not part of it. Because, if you even look at our immunization system right now, there's a specific community in Jamaica, that because of their beliefs, they are government exempted from getting immunized. Right? Yeah. Which itself sounds a little weird, but that's kind of the nature of a modern society where you have varying beliefs and systems. But government has pretty much said they don't really care about anybody that disagrees. Everybody must do it, or else they won't be allowed simple things like medical care. You won't be allowed medical care if you don't have a national ID card. Your child won't be able to go to school if they don't have a national ID card, even though in that situation the child wouldn't be, they wouldn't even make the choice not to have an ID card, but their parents wouldn't be making that choice.
Let me ask you this.
So that is one of the main issues that we have with it.
Yeah, so they had 168 amendments the other day. Have you gotten any understanding as to, in terms of those concerns, if those are among the 168 amendments?
Well, unfortunately, that is not in the compulsory nature of it has not been addressed. The government has insisted, even after making 168 other amendments, that it must remain compulsory for every single Jamaican. Now, when it was previously at the lower house, there were exemptions that were put in place, right? These exemptions were, which themselves were amendments from the lower house. Amendments were made to those amendments to remove the exemptions. So what I'm now referring to is an amendment that took place in the Senate, which is a negative amendment in terms of how we are understanding the growth of, or the way the needs has moved along in the system. Let me explain further. So the lower house was saying there has to be some amount of exemptions. For instance, if you are part of this community, does not want to identify themselves to the government and join the NID system, and you have a medical emergency, shouldn't the government say, wow, these are people, these are Jamaican citizens, they don't believe in the NID, they didn't join the system, but there's a medical emergency, let us allow that exemption. They said, no, we're not allowing this exemption. We're not allowing any exemption at all. So that's the kind of hard and fast line that the government has taken, and it is really a deviation from the normal government that we're used to in this country, bossing. So this is not the kind of attitude that we're used to. We're used to a less autocratic and a less hard and fast government, because, this is not South Korea or Estonia where you have, autocratic regimes with dictators and stuff. What we expect from our leaders, which we elect, right, the leaders that we elect, we expect that they would allow us space, allow us a discussion, and allow us to be able to interface with the material that is presented to us, and that they would, allow wiggle room for persons that might not be on it right now, or even the future might not be on it. But they have decided they want to have any exemptions at all. You will buy from government services, whether or not your life depends on it, essentially.
Well, they have to push through because the money is there, and they have to use up the money fast, so that's why they're rushing this thing so fast. The thing won't come until 2019, so we don't.
Can I speak to the money issue?
Yeah.
Because the money issue is also a big thing. Now, the senators are not taking 8.9 billion Jamaican dollars out of their own pockets. What they are saying is that they're borrowing money from the Inter-American Development Bank, and all of us Jamaicans are going to essentially work together for the next couple of years and pay this loan back. The very fact that they have decided on our behalf that they are going to take this loan means that we need to have a say. They are not the ones that are going to be paying it back by themselves,
That's what you're saying. That's what we're saying, because they're gonna do this thing now, and then we and our pitting them have to go up pay back when them dead and gone. So them are doing what them can do right now, because them are right now, and them soon dead and gone, and the money is here to be paid.
It is a very, very sad situation where we really feel that the government has completely circumvented the normal modus operandi where we consult the people. This is a democracy. And with such a hefty loan, we're already over $2 trillion in debt. They're saying they're going to add another $9 billion to that $2 trillion, right? And they have not satisfied the public appetite for why this thing is even necessary. Why should we really go in this direction? There has not been proper consultation with the public. They have not explained any kind of, analysis as to a cost-benefit ratio. Okay, it will cost $9 billion, but we will benefit so much more. There's no kind of discussion like that. It's just kind of, this is what we want, we're going to do it, we're not listening to what anybody's saying, and we're going to proceed as we have planned, completely inflexible and quite autocratic, which is not what we expect from our government at all.
All right. So in wrapping up now, what will be your overall next step? Because the concerns, them not going away, and the thing is coming.
Well, that's the thing now. We are putting together our plans because we don't want this thing to go through at all. The next step is from the Senate, it is going back to the lower house on Tuesday.
Right.
Right? So on Tuesday, it will be back at Garden House. So we're asking the public, if you disagree, to come out in your numbers, to stand in your Jamaican colors, to express the fact that you disagree with these things. Now, the difference between the Senate and the lower house is that the lower house is actually filled with members of parliament, people that we have elected to represent us, right, who are supposed to speak on our behalf.
Right.
So this is where we really need to apply the pressure, because we put them there. We didn't put the senators there. We put the MPs there. So now the MPs are going to make this final decision as to whether or not it should go through. So every single Jamaican that disagrees with this thing, this thing that says it's if you're not on it, if you don't agree with it, you will be denied all. If your house are burned down, it's a government service. The fire
truck now come.
Firefighters is a government service, right? The fire truck now go come. If you're not in it, your children can't go to school. Almost everything you can think about, you know. All of these things that we have access to now would be denied every Jamaican, and it's a very serious scenario. Come out and show it. There's also a petition online that we endorse fully by Ivan Williams. You can check it out. It's raving on social media right now. We have almost 15,000 signatures, and that is within 4 days, you know. So the public is really, really concerned about this. So we're saying to it. And also the Love March, which I lead, we are going to put on a social media campaign. You'll hear more about it. It will be called Crush the Rush. Right? Crush the rush, because there's this attitude that the government has that they're going to rush this thing through, and we're just going to jump into this, and we don't even know why we're in this, and we're saying that can't work. Do the proper consultation, right? Let us look through the bill properly and make sure we get out all these areas that are just very negative for our people, which do not represent the culture of governance in Jamaica over the years. We do not represent and do not even associate well with what we have gone through as a people, because what they're saying is that they have base needs right now of the systems in Estonia and South Korea. But when you check out these two countries especially, they have a history of an autocratic state that live they live under threat of war constantly.
New level of autocracy coming, man. But a new level of autocracy coming.
The level of involvement in their private lives would be necessary because they're under this threat so much, but we are not under that threat. So we don't need them to be so fully involved in our private affairs, tracking our locations and stuff like that using the car. That is excessive, and it is not even as mandatory for them as our government is proposing for it to be mandatory for us.
All right.
You understand?
So Tuesday. So quickly, Tuesday. What happening Tuesday?
On Tuesday,
quickly.
The bill, right?
No, man, what you will be doing? What you will be doing?
We will be doing a silent protest outside Garden House, just like we did with the Senate on Monday and on Friday. We want the whole place packed out with Jamaicans in our red, green, gold, and black, the Jamaican colors.
Right.
We're going to be there standing and letting them know that we disagree with this thing.
All right. Give thanks. You hear?
Yeah, man. Thanks much.
And we'll be in touch.
Yeah, man. I like the page on Facebook, Love March Movement, and keep up with what is going on, because if we do not speak up, this thing is going to go through. We'll have to speak up. We'll have to act, right? Stay tuned to what we have in store on our page, and we'll definitely make a stance against this thing.
All right, thanks. All right, that was Dr. Daniel Thomas from the Love March Movement, member of the Jamaica Coalition for a Healthy Society. And of course, it's all about NIDS, the new national identity system which is coming, which serious concerns regarding trampling on the rights and the denial of certain services to the Jamaican people if you don't sign up to this stinger. Cutting Edge here, IRIE FM. 4 minutes past 11 o'clock. Yes, Cutting Edge here on IRIE FM. So we just hope that, there was some more light shed a while ago regarding the national identification system, which is coming, and some of the rights that could be denied if this thing comes. So the people are planning to have a silent protest on Tuesday. So turn up and see. Them have petition launch. Them have, information in regards to why they think this thing is being rushed. And it's all about resistance now, because we have to be careful how these things are being imposed upon us. A lot of countries have looked at this system according to what we're hearing and has turned it down. They're not into this system at all, but Jamaica is in it. So today is 53 years to the date that the body of Marcus Mosiah Garvey was enshrined in the then King George Memorial Park, now known as the National Heroes Park. Garvey's body was brought home from England. And according to the headlines of the day, Marcus Garvey has come in honor. Today, with ceremony, he will be laid to rest in his native soil, in a shrine built by an appreciative nation. Even if controversial, the rugged, humble son of St. Anne, who was to make his name known in the wide world, has come to a final award and reward in the land of his birth. That was according to the Jamaica Gleaner of the day. So the newspaper had recorded that around 30,000 people turned out to witness Garvey's burial as a national hero back in 1964, November 15. And as we say, it's 53 years to the date today. The oak and mahogany casket was carried on a police vehicle in a procession which left the Holy Trinity Cathedral at 3:50 p.m., traveling along North Street and up East Street to its destination at Heroes Park now. And he had died 24 years earlier on June 10, they said, due to cardiac failure, due to hypertension. So 53 years to the date, information on what happened today. Yes.
When you come up to a black woman and you say things like, wow, you're so beautiful. Oh, thank you, brother. Keep going. Nah, you're mad exotic. Like, what you mixed with? I'm mixed with black. Nah, but you mad pretty. Like, you got something else in you. You too pretty to be black. Me done some black. Oh, why you insulted? Like, that's a compliment. Well, to a black woman who isn't there as yet in her journey, where she doesn't know herself, that's a compliment. Yeah, you know, my great step-grand roach is this. But to a conscious black woman, a woman who knows herself, that's an insult, okay? That is not a compliment. Because you're telling me, the original woman, that me, I have to be mixed with somebody else to be supreme. Excuse me? Huh? You really alter order for that. And furthermore, this word exotic is so misused. It just simply means different from the norm. It has nothing to do with being of a specific race or being mixed or anything like that. And by definition, black women, the most diverse women on earth, are exotic.
Is the cutting edge here on IRE FM. We're going to go to Jamaican roots and culture in a short while. So stay tuned for that.
Load up with a bag of cash with AM Financial's 3 months cashback loan special. Borrow from $20,000 to $3.3 million and get back your first 3 months installments. Yes, cash right back in your hand to spend. No, buy a car, fix up your house, pay a school fee, plus something nice for yourself. CMD approval. Cashback loan ends January 31st. Call 906-0534. WhatsApp 4373982. Apply online, AM Financial JA. Conditions apply.
Welcome to Jamaican Roots and Culture. I'm Pat Clark. Although rail service is virtually non-existent in modern-day Jamaica, there was a time in the island when the railway service was very important. The history of the rail service in Jamaica reveals that up to the early 1840s, there were no railways in Jamaica, as the many mountains made the laying of the rails a difficult job. The Jamaican government also did not have sufficient funds for this venture. 2 English brothers, William and David Smith, asked the government to allow them to build the railway, and this was to become the first railway in the British West Indies. They began building the railway in 1844 across the Ligani Plains from Kingston to Spanish Town. In late 1845, the railway was completed and was subsequently opened on November 21, 1845 by the governor, Lord Elgin. The railway was 14 miles long and ran from Kingston to Spanish Town. The first engine was called Projector and it ran on steam. People lined the route and cheered and waved as the train went by at a slow pace. The band of the 1st West Indies Regiment added to the festivity of the scene. The government bought the railway company in 1879, after which they laid 24.5-mile extensions from Old Harbour via Maypen to Porus, and this was opened on February 26, 1885. An additional 14.5-mile extension from Spanish Town to Angels to Bog Walk to Linstead and then on to Yoreton was opened on August 13th of the same year. Despite the many lines which had been laid, the north coast of the island had still not been reached. The government saw that they would not be able to pay for the laying of the lines across the mountains. Therefore, in 1890, they sold the company to the West Indian Improvement Company. In 1894, the line to Montego Bay was opened. This line was 66 miles long and ran from Porus to Montego Bay. The line from Kingston to Montego Bay was now about 113 miles long and its tunnels were cut through rocks. The Port Antonio 54-mile extension from Bog Walk was reached in 1896. The mountain lines were now all laid. The construction of these lines created a vast drain on the resources of the West Indian Improvement Company, and like the Smith brothers, they did not make the success of operating the railway as they had hoped. In 1898, the shareholders assumed control of the line, finally defaulting to the government in April 1900. The end result was good for the government. It had sold the line at a handsome profit, had the two most difficult sections constructed for it, and now had control of the line again. More locomotives were ordered, including 3 unusual Kitson-Mare articulated locomotives. The total route mileage was, at this stage, almost 185 miles. Many new lines were laid after the government took over. In April 1913, a short spur line from Linstead to New Works was opened and was followed later in the year by a 13-mile line from Maypen along the banks of the Rio Minho to Chapelton. The 10-mile extension to Frankfield from Chapelton was authorized at the same time. The line was not to be opened, however, until 1925. 1958 saw the opening of a line from Linstead along the site of the original Yoreton line to Pleasant Farm Alcan Bauxite Works, some 2 miles away from Yoreton. Apart from the Jamaica Railway Corporation lines, there were also a number of other railway lines in the island. In 1973, JRC's operational deficit had risen to 3.4 million, and in 1975 it was nearing 4 million and carrying an $11 million loan. The government was paying over $1.4 million in subsidy to keep the island's trains running. However, the financial crisis had led to a backlog of deferred maintenance, with stock and buildings also neglected. In 1974, the Maypen to Frankfield line closed, whilst the Bog Walk to Port Antonio line closed in 1975. Public pressure forced the government to reopen the Port Antonio line in 1977. Hurricane Allen in 1980 damaged much of the Jamaica Railway Corporation's railway system and totally destroyed a section of the Port Antonio line running along the coast between Buff Bay and Orange Bay. In October 1992, public rail transportation services finally ceased operating in Jamaica. On April 16, 2011, public passenger service resumed in the island with an inaugural train operated from Maypen to Linstead. Regular service was planned to begin in July, with 3 round trips per day between Spanish Town and Linstead, and with extensions to Williamsfield and Gregory Park opening in September and December respectively. The railway service again proved to be inefficient and was therefore placed on hold again. And now, to end the Jamaican roots and culture, here's our famous quotation from the Black diaspora. Black and white is abstract, color is not. Looking at a black and white photograph, you are already looking at a strange world. The words of Joel Sternfield. For Jamaican Roots and Culture, I'm Pat Clark.
Jamaica is waiting. We are the whole lot of people waiting. Jamaica is waiting. Jamaica is waiting. Full moon so bright, tropical delight. Happy native dancing, morning, noon, and night.
All right, that was Pat Clark, Jamaican Roots and Culture, here on the Cutting Edge, IRIA FM. Some valuable information there regarding the history of rails in Jamaica. And ironically, you know, with rails, the Jamaican Railway was the second railway that was established this side of the world. I think the first one was the Long Island Railroad, and then the Jamaica Railroad was established. And it went on for more than a century, and now we don't have any railroad. We're always hearing about they're trying to resuscitate and this and that and that, but rails then, no rails now. Have we regressed? Have we moved forward? Have we stepped back? We don't know. Cutting Edge here on IRIA FM, Roger Asphalt, along with Sanjay. We're there, you, holding your company, keeping the fort, and the journey continues. So, recently there was an incident up by Bobo Hill, over there, 9 Mile, Bull Bay. And we're going to talk a little bit now about the Bobo Shanti commune. Of course, the material structure within the commune itself is in need of repair and refurbishing. And there was an incident, fire and all sort of excitement that took place up there recently. And there was a meeting regarding that, but we're going to hear more. Who's going to help us to shed some light on that is David Brown. He's the Senior Research Fellow at the African Caribbean Institute of Jamaica and the Jamaica Memory Bank. Good night, David. Welcome.
Good night, and thanks for having me.
Yeah, good to have you. So, I gather there was a meeting recently to look at some of the problems and issues that are happening up there at the Bobo Shanti commune. So I want give me an overview as to what is this all about and where we are going.
Well, there was an incident recently at the Bobo camp in 9 Mile where an arsonist actually entered the commune, and did substantial damage to sections of the commune, lit a fire to spaces that were used for spaces of worship, the place where they call their office, that has a lot of archival material that the Bobo Shanti uses for the official business and where they store the official documents, some of them which have been collected over the years since the founding of the commune in 1958 by Prince Emmanuel, and one or two other spaces that were used for meetings as well. There is extensive damage to the commune itself as it relates to how it is that the Rastafari and brethren now have to be apportioning other spaces within that commune to use as the functions of the spaces that they have lost. I'm told that it is under investigation. That is a matter outside of my remit. But what I wanted people to understand was that this has severely affected or disturbed the regular day-to-day activities of the brethren.
To what extent, no? To what extent?
Well, let me say this first. I remember when the incident first came out, I was reading on social media some of the reactions of people to the fact that a fire took place at the commune. The word on the street was that there was some disturbance, some altercation, and that someone's goat had gotten trapped up at the commune. The goat had died, and the person in retaliation decided to burn down the commune, or parts of the commune. Those are the allegations, and they are certainly making the rounds. I am still unclear as to what actually took place, and that is certainly for debate and for the police to look into, right? What disturbed me, though, were the comments that people put up on social media to say, boy, Rasta eat meat and all these kind of negative things ascribing it to the Bobo Shanti, I think it came, those comments come about because of a lack of understanding of who the Baba are, what their beliefs are, how they live, how they treat others, how they expect to be treated, you know. For too long, Jamaicans have had probably negative image of Rastafari in general, and probably a misunderstanding of the Baba Shanti themselves in particular, which is why I think that some of those comments were made. People don't understand, though, that if you put it in the context of a Jamaican scenario, more people could relate to. Your space of worship for many Jamaicans is a church.
Yeah.
If there was a dispute between a member of a congregation and someone else, and the person who felt affected thought it necessary to burn the church or your space of worship, it would certainly cause a lot of consternation to the people who use that space. I want people to look at what took place at the Baba camp within those kind of lenses. You understand?
Mm-hmm.
The Baba Shanti Commune was created in 1958.
1958.
Yes. Many of the Rastafarian brethren would have found spaces to live and to exist, because at the time Rastafari brethren were always being scattered because of in response to actions taken by the state. You had previous things where people were moved from what they call Dongle, down by West Kingston, for argument's sake.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And you had one or two other historic incidents where Rastafarians were treated in a very negative way.
The whole pinnacle issues as well.
Right. And so the creation of a space where Rastafarian brethren could exist and live along the principles that they themselves felt were the way that they should live was one of the responses to that kind of threat and attack on them. And so Pinnacle came about. Originally it was a self-sufficient, or wanted to be a self-sufficient commune where Rastafarian brethren could grow their own food, live their own lives, be removed as far from Babylon as possible,
right,
while for the Baba Shanti awaiting the day when they would be able to repatriate back to Africa.
Mm-hmm.
And that is certainly how it is that they constructed their commune.
Yes.
Many of the structures of the commune are wooden. And I believe, my own interpretation, I believe that they are done that way because they believe that they are not going to be here permanently, that they are waiting for the day and the time when they themselves and other descendants of enslaved Africans who constitute most of Jamaica will be returned back to Africa.
Right.
Many of the structures that were destroyed a couple of weeks ago in the fire were wooden. And you can imagine that they themselves didn't take any time to be burnt, you know.
What about like archival stuffs? Those were destroyed as well?
Yes. A lot of things that were presented to members of the Baba Shanti community in the period since it has been created. Gifts from visiting African delegations, just state, visitors to the commune in general, visitors from various universities, rods and staff and these kind of things that belong to Prince Emmanuel, some copies of their writings and constitutions, hymnals, these kind of things were all destroyed.
Wow.
What I want people to understand is, if you think about it as a space of worship, as a sacred space to your beliefs and your traditions, whether or not we in the wider Jamaica agree with them or adhere to their beliefs, it's irrelevant.
Right.
It is wrong for anyone to go and trample on someone's very sacred space. You understand? That's the thing for me that we need to understand. And it was in the context of Jamaican culture. Rastafari is one of the most important cultural movements to have come out of this island.
Sure.
The Baba Shanti see themselves not just as what they call a mansion or a house of Rastafari. They see themselves as original and the first, basically call it the first set of Rastafari. The Baba Shanti themselves don't refer to themselves as a mansion or a house. they refer to themselves as a Congress. They're basically a Rastafarian government that basically are leading the movement for repatriation and reparation.
Yes, all right. Let me get, because we're wrapping up shortly. So, in your observations, they are in some level of need to get back some level of semblance, some level of sanity. What were your observations in your meetings?
We visited the Communal on the 5th of November, and you could see that there was extensive damage to spaces that were there. Even one of the seats, a seat that belonged to Prince Emmanuel, was burnt, but it was partially burnt because the President was able to save it.
Yes.
But they need material to reconstruct some of those spaces that were destroyed. They need practical things like lumber, probably cement, these kind of things, to reconstruct those spaces, because they've had to be now doing makeshift accommodation for offices and for worship spaces and stuff at the commune. So whatever form of assistance can be given to the brethren in 9 Mile would be greatly appreciated, as they themselves try to restore what was lost in the fire.
Yeah. What about archival collection?
Archival material that was lost formed part of the discussions that the brethren had with the African Caribbean Institute of Jamaica, which is a part of the Ministry of Youth and Culture. Ministry of Culture, Culture, Gender, Entertainment and Sport. Based on an earlier meeting that we had some weeks before that, that was convened by the Minister, under Badly Green, we discussed the fire, and we started to have a discussion with the Rastafarian brethren at Bobo community to see how we could assist. The African Caribbean Institute is what is called the focal point for intangible cultural heritage in Jamaica. And basically that means that we are responsible for ensuring that cultural forms in Jamaica are protected and safeguarded, right? What took place at the commune means that some of the Rastafarian practices, certainly their worship, certain spaces of transmission of their culture from the elders to the young, could very well be interrupted because of what took place. What we are trying to do is to say to them, okay, how is it that we can, as an organization, help them to make sure that that interruption is not lasting and that it won't happen in the future. So things like making copies of documents that they already have, things like creating photographic and video records of what exists now.
Yes.
Things like interviewing the brethren and getting a full sense of the philosophies and beliefs of the Bobo Shanti brethren. Those kind of things. To archive that material and to have it housed at the Institute of Jamaica, specifically African Caribbean Institute of Jamaica,
right,
for greater public access, and to have that, whatever it is that we collect, to have a copy of it stored at a mirror archive at the Bobo Shanti camp for themselves to access.
Yes, yes.
Those things didn't exist before. We're trying to see if that moving forward, we can assist them in protecting what it is they have. Keep a set of it offsite as a part of best practice in protecting cultural material in case of any natural disaster in the future, any such occurrence,
Yeah, so we see now where a call has also been made on the Jamaica National Heritage Trust.
Yes.
To look at the space as a historic one, or where you sure that is concerned, and considered a World Heritage Site as well.
Yeah, I couldn't speak to what the Jamaican National Heritage Trust is doing. I do know that the brethren see the space as a very important one in terms of Jamaica's cultural heritage. It certainly could benefit from our designation as a heritage site if that is the course that is taken. But that will certainly be something that will have to be a discussion between the ministry, the JNHP, the brethren at Bobo Shanti, if they so desire. You understand?
Yes.
So I really couldn't speak to that. What I do know is that I just want Jamaicans to be aware that the space itself in 9 Miles, Bullby, really is part of that Jamaican body of culture that we need to understand, and it represents part of that cultural heritage that we should be more appreciative of and understanding of.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Any final words you want to leave with us?
I would just want to say for the general public who have never been up there, to probably take some time out and visit the state, probably get a greater appreciation of the people who are up there and the beliefs that they have. You don't have to be converted to it. Just be aware of what exists and what it is that these people have been saying for so long, and what is that drives them to live in the commune and to have the beliefs that they have.
Okay, great. So I want to give thanks for you to join us this evening to shed some light on your meeting with the Bobo Shanti personnel recently, and what is really happening and what you hope to accomplish in terms of, getting them back to some level of sanity to where they previously were. So you say as well that, I did say finally, but you are cognizant as well that the Virgin, they are adamant that they really don't need any handout from the state, but welcome donations from the public. And also they have repeated demands for reparations and immediate repatriation to Africa.
Yes. That is one of the central messages that they want to get across, that they would very much wish for the state to facilitate their efforts to be repatriated to Africa, while they also welcome donations from the public in the form of assistance to restore the spaces that were lost.
All right, thank you very much. And of course, we'll follow this one closely, and we'll definitely talk again as we move forward where this is concerned.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, man. All right. David Brown there, the Senior Research Fellow, African Caribbean Institute of Jamaica, Jamaica Memory Bank. Yeah, man, Sugar Minot, man, singing about Africa, the black man's home. This is the cutting edge. So we're here in Jamaica on this year, November 15, 2017, heading into November 16 shortly, and we continue to cry about the crime in Jamaica. And we saw some new data today coming out that it had close to 1,600 murders now for the year, and it don't look good at all. And they have been zooming in on the parish of St. James. And the latest thing now is that the parish of St. James licked 300 murders now for the year. And what this is saying is that at this rate, at the rate that is going now, Montego Bay, this is what is being put forward, Montego Bay is unquestionably one of the most deadliest cities in the world. That is based on the data. They are saying now that it is tracking at 38 times above the global murder rate. 230 murders per 100,000 population. And at this rate, they say it is unquestionably one of the most wickedest city in the world right now. Montego Bay, Rasta? Montego Bay? Boy, I don't know, but it don't look good at all. And normally, these things were reserved for the capital, Kingston, but Kingston now is now, much different. We all know what, some of the things that has led to the overall issues that Montego Bay is having right now, and that is some serious cause for concern. We ask the people, we are asked, what more? We come on the radio every day and we talk and we give advice. We offer, all sorts of solutions and, But, I did some research the other day, And I am convinced that what is happening in Jamaica right now is it has become part of our DNA by virtue of history. And, I did some research, and I am looking at the amount of times that there have been some serious uprisings in Jamaica over the past, 3-4 centuries. And the first major uprising in Jamaica happened in 1678. And we're talking about from 1678 to about 1980, when we had that whole political explosion, and which led to them time the 800 murders per year. That time it looked like 800,000, and in comparison to what is happening now on a regular basis. But there have been 28 major uprisings in Jamaica over the past couple of centuries. 1678, 1684, 1686. Then there was 1690, which they say was the starting of the first Maroon War, and that big uprising that's happening in Chapelton in 1690. The same Chapelton in Clarendon right now. Yeah, that was when the Windward Maroons merged. Then you had war in 1691, 1702, 1717. Then there was a war in Jamaica in 1722 where the authorities imported the Mosquito Indians to help quell and to help to fight back the African people. The Mosquito Indians, they came from out of, I think, Guatemala. They bring them in Jamaica to help fight off the black people at the day. 1734, 1738, the Kojo-led war. 1739, Kwaku. Then there was a 17 war in Jamaica in 1740, in 1746, 1758, 1760, that war led by Taki on Easter Monday. And of course, we're hearing calls now for Taki to be a national hero. 1765, 1771, 1777, 1782, which was a three-finger jack war. Yeah, a three-finger jack war, 1782. 1793, which was a second Maroon War in Jamaica when, about Runaway Bay and all those things, and then when they capture the people of the day, then they send them back to Nova Scotia and Canada before they eventually end up in Sierra Leone. So, you have a Jamaican population in Sierra Leone, descendants from them time, the 1793, 1795, 1796, 1798, 1824, and of course the big one, 1831 to 32, the Christmas War down in Western Jamaica, where all of the Western parishes were involved. And of course, that war eventually was a seminal thing that led to the abolishment of slavery 2-3 years later. And there was a big war in Kingston in 1841. That was the first recorded big war in Kingston, 1841. 1865, of course, was the Morant Bay War. And then 1938 was the Labour War, which led to the formation of the political parties in Jamaica. 1980, big political war. That was the last major, war in Jamaica. So I said to say this, that certain things based off of history, and especially history over the past 3 years, we are seeing why we are in the position where we are now. And it's a thing that is in our DNA we need to address.
Brothers and sisters, this is Chalice. Join us with respect for our national anthem. Let us stand and defend this one. Peace and love. Thank you.
Eternal Father, bless our land. Guide us with thy mighty hand. Keep us free from evil powers. Do our life through countless hours. To our leaders, great defenders, great true wisdom from above. Justice, justice, truth, be ours forever. Jamaica, land we love. Jamaica, 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 land we
All right, this is the cutting edge, and the time in Jamaica is 12 o'clock.
Mr. Tire, located in Montego Bay. Telephone 952-4222. And Mandeville, Mr. Tire, take 4 for the road. The time by Mr. Tire is
12 o'clock. Yeah, same 12 o'clock. We don't move from 12 o'clock yet, so we're heading into a minute past 12. Yeah, so, you know, as I was saying, a lot of things. And when we're doing research, we see why we are in such a state right now where this society has become so hardened based off you know, what happened over the past couple of centuries here in Jamaica. And we are seeing now where, you know, we see the governments come and governments go, and them come with all sort of thing, but they cannot find a solution to quell this crime rate here in Jamaica. And it's a serious cause of concern. But I show you that based off of history, we are where we are now. Because Jamaican people always had to be fighting for them rights, as we heard from Empress Sativa earlier, is a serious thing, you know? And we play this thing right now. We can't stop playing them thing, you know, because it is important that, you know, we continue to educate, especially the younger ones, about why we are here and what we had done to get us out of certain situations.
And in the British colony of Jamaica, the vast majority of people are slaves. They're forced to labour in the sugarcane fields, and often the work goes on 12 hours a day. The slaves are overseen by men wielding whips, and there are frequent brutal punishments. A Baptist missionary called Henry Bleeby is appalled by what he sees on the island. And in the language of his time, he writes this account of a scene he witnessed in the countryside.
On reaching the estate, I was informed that 6 Negroes were to be punished. The first was a man of about 35 years of age, a cattle herder. His offence was having allowed a mule to go astray. At the command of the overseer, he proceeded to strip off part of his clothes and laid himself flat on his belly, his back and buttocks being uncovered. One of the drivers then commenced flogging him with the cart whip. This whip is about 10 feet long and is an instrument of terrible power. It is whirled by the operator round his head and then brought down with a rapid motion of the arm upon the victim, causing the blood to spring at every stroke. When I saw this spectacle, now for the first time before my eyes, and saw the degraded and mangled victim writhing and groaning, I felt horror-struck. I trembled and turned sick. As soon as the scene was over, the overseer came into the hall and asked me to drink some rum with him. I told him I was sick and could taste nothing, that I was overwhelmed with horror at the scene I had just witnessed. He said it was not a pleasant duty, certainly, but it was an indispensable one, and that I would soon get used, as others did, to such spectacles.
Jamaica's slaves have endured their plight for more than 200 years, but now they know that in Britain the campaign to abolish slavery is gathering momentum. They believe their freedom is coming, and they decide to press for it by mounting a strike. They decide they won't return to work after Christmas, and on this day, December the 27th, they rise up.
In the evening, as it grew dark, the first indication of the actual revolt was given by the burning of the houses and sugar works on a large plantation. It is impossible to describe the consternation that prevailed in the town and neighbourhood of Montego Bay where these fires commenced, and the horizon for miles was lighted up with a strong, lurid glare by the burning estates. The same evening, the insurgents made an attack upon Montpellier. They approached in two parties, raising loud, discordant noise with horns. The 7th Company of St. James's Regiment boldly stood to repel the assailants, but owing to the darkness of night, they could not see where to direct their fire, except by the flashes of the insurgents' muskets.
Soon, plantations were burning all across western Jamaica. The slaves had managed to organize some small units of fighters, but when the colonial authorities rallied and sent in their military, the rebels were hopelessly outgunned and quickly overpowered.
Both regular troops and militia forces were employed with decisive effect, reducing the insurgents to submission. This was not a difficult matter where the troops had only a disorganized and for the most part an unarmed mob of Negroes to contend with. On several occasions, small bodies of Negroes lying in ambush ventured to assail detachments of the military, but this was only for a moment. A volley would generally suffice to scatter them. 16 bodies dragged into the road were putrefying in the sun when we passed by, presenting a horrible spectacle. Hundreds of crows were feeding upon them, and scarcely lifted their drowsy wings while our horses stepped over the remnants. There lay one body, the head of which was completely stripped of flesh by the crows, and the bare skull, still attached to the partly clothed body, seemed to grin at us as we passed.
Around 200 slaves died in the crushing of the revolt, and then several hundred more were put on trial.
At first, shooting was the favourite mode of execution, and many were thus disposed of. But when the novelty of this had ceased, the gallows was put in requisition. Half an hour only was the time generally allowed to the condemned slaves between trial and execution, and it often occurred that men were tried, sentenced, and executed all within 1 hour and a half. The bodies remained stiffened in the breeze, until the court-martial had provided another batch of victims for the hands of a brutal Negro who acted as executioner.
There were around 300 executions altogether. The most prominent of the rebel leaders was a slave called Samuel Sharpe. He was a man in his early 30s who had become a Baptist Christian. Daddy Sharpe, as he was known, was regarded with affection and respect by his fellow slaves, and he was said to have been a charismatic speaker, delivering inspiring messages of hope for freedom. His fellow Baptist, Henry Bleeby, was allowed to visit him in jail.
I had much conversation with him whilst he was in confinement, and found him certainly the most intelligent and remarkable slave I had ever met. I heard him 2 or 3 times deliver a speech. I was amazed both at the power and freedom with which he spoke. He appeared to have the feelings and passions of his hearers completely at his command. He thought, and he had learned from the Bible, that the whites had no more right to hold the black people in slavery than the black people had to make the white people slaves. "Minister," he said, "I would rather die upon yonder gallows than live in slavery." He expressed deep regret that such extensive destruction of property and life had resulted from the conspiracy he had promoted. His only object was to obtain freedom. Sharpe was the last victim that was put to death for taking part in the insurrection. He was executed at Montego Bay on the 23rd of May, 1832. His execution excited a great deal of interest, and a considerable number of spectators assembled to witness it. He marched to the spot where so many had been sacrificed to the demon of slavery with a firm and dignified step. I could not help feeling deep sorrow and indignation as I turned from his death scene and brushed away the tears, that such a man as Samuel Sharpe should be thus immolated at the polluted shrine of slavery.
But Samuel Sharpe did not die in vain. Over time, the uprising would have a significant impact. Diana Payton is a reader in Caribbean history at Newcastle University in the north of England.
This is a really crucial event. It demonstrates to people back in Britain that the level of repression that's needed to sustain slavery is just going to get more and more intense all the time. And in the end, it comes to seem that that's not worth it, that if slavery is going to produce such extraordinary scenes of brutality, more and more people in Britain aren't prepared to support that anymore. So this rebellion, I mean, on its own, you couldn't say it ended slavery, but it contributes to the kind of environment in the early 1830s that means that slavery is no longer politically viable. And, you know, it's only a couple of years later that you get the passage of the Act for the Abolition of Slavery and the beginnings of the dismantling of the slave system itself.
The courage of those who rose up in 1831 is fully appreciated in Jamaica today. Samuel Sharpe is officially recognized as a national hero. He appears on the country's $50 banknote, and the place where he was hanged in Montego Bay is now known as Sam Sharpe Square.
Old pirates, yes, they're a by. Sold I to the merchant ships. Minutes after they took I from the bottomless pit, but my hand was made strong by the hand of the Almighty. We forward in this generation triumphantly. Won't you help to sing these songs of freedom? 'Cause all I ever had, redemption song, redemption song, emancipate yourselves from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our mind. Have no fear for atomic energy, 'cause none of them can stop the time. Oh, how long shall they kill our prophets while we stand aside and look? Yes, some say it's just a part of it. We've got to fulfill the book. Oh, won't you help to sing these songs of freedom? 'Cause all I ever had, redemption song, redemption song, redemption song, redemption song, redemption song, redemption song. Emancipate yourselves from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our mind. Have no fear for atomic energy, 'cause none of them can stop the time. Oh, how long shall they kill our prophets while we stand aside and look? Some say it's just a part of it. We've got to fulfill the book. Oh, won't you help to sing these songs of freedom? 'Cause all I ever had, redemption song, redemption song, redemption song. 'Cause all I ever had, redemption song, songs of freedom. Songs of
eradicate the problem. What a strong man for Ghana, African land, Jamaica plantation. Incoming on one ship, transatlantic, the mega pass a slave shade. They make a pass a slave shade, white man benefiting. Say him now work at all on a plantation and take not a little bit from no white man. Him plan a strategy, you know him a fair run, they pull a chain from the neck and he lick them down. He run and jump over this, jump over that. No for follow him and some get shot. They say me feminine, we know them wrong, we know them wrong. Tack, 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 them feel we. Get them another joke and they stop by the way. Tack, 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 them again. Feel we tack it, eradicate the problem. Tack, 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 them feel we. Get them another joke and they stop by the way. Tack, 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 them again. Feel we tack it, eradicate the problem. Tack it, stick it out tidy. Describe him all I can. Say all the negative, your desecrated plan. This attack him and the enslaved grow. We never know if for yourself. Tack it show. This a Galashan chief. Invade plantations like a thief. 1760, in massacre the beast. Take with them food, and for we make a feast. In the hill where I reside, we opposite the by side. We attack the battalion, we come to make we divide. We not bow to servitude, cause we know we have a skill. Tack, 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 them for we. Give them another to come and stop by the way. Tack, 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 them again. Feel we tack it, eradicate the problem. Tack, 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 them for we. Give them another to come and stop by the way. Tack, 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 tack.
Yeah, the man Ras Jaja, you know, giving us the tacky story.
Easy at all. Them do anything for rule. So them be a black Uncle Tom. Forget tacky cool. Them ambush him off guard. It was a slaver's award. Uncle Tom around police them. Collect the reward. No people go surrender. Pick me hungry, some are starve. In 1765, the Coromantis keep the struggle. But the struggle is hard. Although them kill Taki, they can't kill with history. Even though them name Taki Paris, St. Mary. Tack, tack, tacky, tack, tack, them feel we. Give them another to come in, they stop by the way. Tack, tack, tacky, tack, tack, them again. Feel we Taki, eradicate the problem. Tack, tack, tacky, tack, tack, them feel we. Give them another to come in, they stop by the way. Tack, tack, tacky, tack, tack, them again. Feel we Taki, eradicate the problem. We have Taki River Falls and Taki High School. So all the Taki youth them and grow to come rule. We have Capitan, Andrea Williams Cabo, and Barry Saman. Lady Star Tanya Stevens and DJ Ninja Man. No food name never call. If I you not feel small, come make we solidify like a great Taki wall. I saw we stand tall. Tough African wall.
Do you want to grow? Do you want to build? PB Agency makes it easier with loans and advances. We offer payday, small, personal, and business loans with competitive interest rates. We promise a hassle-free and speedy process in getting your loan and consultation. For us, you are a person, not a statistic. We take pride in that personal touch with every client, and you deserve it. Call us at 558-3715. That's 558-3715. PB Agency, Suite 11, 78 Slide Road, Crossroads. Building individuals and entities financially.
It's time to give back at the Caribbean Love Now Jamathon Benefit Concert featuring Barris Hammond, Sean Paul, Ching Ching, Assassin, Bonnie Whaler, Bunchy Garland, Harley Davis, Sheena McGregor, Christopher Martin, D. Major, David Adapter, Etana, Diane Lloyd, Freddie McGregor, Harry Tradler, Iva Marr, Jacure, Nesbeth, Raging Fire, Romain Virgo, Sizzler, Third World, Tommy Lee Sparta, Vegas, and an all-star backing band led by Dean Fraser. On Wednesday, November 22nd at the National Indoor Sports Center, showtime 7 p.m.
Sponsored by Red Stripe, Low, Campari, Pepsi, Sportsmax, H&L Rapid True Value, Downzone Entertainment, Jamaica Tourist, Sports, 18 years or older, drink responsibly.
Super Paint Color Sizzle Promotion. Here's your chance to win a Hallmark car improvement valued at $20,000, a blue touchbook or a blue Studio 6 smartphone. Grand prize $100,000. Here's how to enter. Come shop at Super Paint, shop number 98 Point Plaza, Ocho Rios. Make purchases of $2,500 plus GCT or more. Fill in the entry form complete with name, contact information, and address. Complete the slogan correctly. You think it, we mix it. Grand draw for Color Sizzle Promotion. Saturday, December 16, 2017. Super Paint Color Sizzle Promotion. Shop number 9, 8 Point Plaza, Ocho Rios. You think it, we mix it. Promotion begins August 4, 2017, ends December 16, 12 midday. Authorized under Section 58.3 of Betting, Gaming and Lotteries Act.
It's Dunn's Electrical and Lighting pre-Christmas Yard Affair Sale, November 24 to 26. Friday 6:30 a.m. to 6 p.m., Saturday 9 a.m. to 6 p.m., and Sunday 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. Door-busted discounts Friday, November 24, only up to 55% off everything from 6:30 to 9 a.m. After that, it's 50% off lighting and home decor, 30% off fans, and 20% off furniture. That's Dunn's Electrical and Lighting pre-Christmas Yard Affair Sale, November 24 to 26. Don't miss it.
Wet Sundays in association with Magnum presents a night called Magnum Wet Sunday 90s dancehall style. Sunday, November 19, 2017 at Auto Vision, 8 Hillview Avenue, featuring the 90s Kings of Dancehall, Stone Love.
The Stone Love sound will play every time.
Sky Juice, Metro Media.
Don't forget, Metro Media, not
Ladies 500, men 1000. Magnum Wet Sunday 90s dancehall style. Sunday, November 19 at Auto Vision. Be your own boss and floss. Must be 18 years or older to drink. ID required. Drink responsibly.
As the schoolboy football season rumbles on, interest intensifies. Some teams even do the maths, while others simply dance into glory lane with their eyes on the major prizes. The Sporting Choice, IRE FM brings you schoolboy football roundup. A look at the games and the scorelines on all match days. Your roundup is brought to you courtesy of
Jamaica Warranty Hub, Shop 819 Main Street, Ocho Rios. For the first time in Jamaica, auto warranty protection for your vehicle. Call Brian Henry at 778-3637. We got you covered.
Total Tools, now open in Kingston. Total Tools, rentals and repairs. 34 Snipe Road. Telephone 548-8494. Contract Music Marketing, promoting the group Persons of Interest with their single Love is the Way for the UK's Abood Music.
Love is the way, love is the way. I try to tell them every day.
Black Beaters Records promoting Black Beaters' new single, Money Chichi and Entrap the Money.
Drop for the money, me I say chop for the money like how jump and things set up shop for the money. And chop the money, me I feel chop the money. Cause you know me not depend on no cash pot money.
For bookings, call 999-2333. Deals and Delivery Hardware, Martin Christie Street, Great Pond, Ocho Rios. Telephone 974-3377. The Everything Hardware and more. Triple M Nursing Institute, changing lives through education. 1 Gully Road, St. Anne's Bay. Now registering for January. Call 467-5123. Michelle's Paint Store, your one-stop paint store. 87 Main Street, Ocho Rios. 85 Market Street, Falmouth. And 7A Gully Road, St. Anne's Bay. Call 974-8089.
Real Deal Windows and Doors. Tower Isle, St. Mary. Telephone 867-9349 for the best in windows and doors. Oil and Chemical Outlet. 4 Old Buckfield, Ocho Rios. Telephone 974-6707. Buy it from the source, wholesale or retail. Bleach at $80 per gallon. JM Floral Designs and Services, where your fantasies become reality. 130 Main Street, Ocho Rios. Call us at 974-9638.
Schoolboy Football Roundup, a sure shot.
In Jamaica, we always have face to burst before things get better. But it's always worse. In this your country, but sometimes things don't run right. As JPS put up them street lights, a bad boy will shock the town the same night. IMF Angolan, I man feel it done. Economic hardships, depravity, political tribalism in we community, scamming, run we country, financial crisis affects the whole away. Rough pocket, regularly, no financial stability. A serious times now, my friends, some start kill senselessly without amends. So decent youth them take up them peace to defend themselves. In this here country, where sometimes things don't run right. As NWC lay them pipe, that will get richer the said night. Gone are days when we were so kind to each other. Bacalao and pop chow stop live their brother and sister. Yam banana dumplings stop bubble up in the same water. In the time of love and unity. We never have a hands up, big or big, mango anarchy. No, when they look into things, God I run red. Every day you get up, them shot a man dead. The glass behind them, usually calm them head. But at the right time, now for the punk and be fed. The right time, now for the blind to be led. Or else the ear, yeah, and the term, spelling D-R-E-A-D. Dread in this country, yeah. But sometimes things don't run right. Enough shot to live in our city. Lord of mercy on we plight. Values, transparency, no killing, no robbery. Teach them picking it, them live what they learn. A just reward for their actions they will earn. Peace and love must begin within. Every woman can be a queen, and every man a king. Where every boy can be a prince, and with little girl beginning them, with little princess. In this country, where sometimes things no run right. Enough shot to lick in our city, Lord of mercy, one we bite. In this country, we can get things right. We can't always play the cards them wrong and expect every little thing fit be alright. Alright. Alright.
Jamaica is what?
Yeah, man, this is the cutting edge, you know, opening the lines, you know, because we don't know we have those of you out there who want reason. So now it's a good time to get those calls in. We can have a little reasoning the remainder of the program. You know, we'll go until 2 o'clock. Sister Claren, just before that you heard from yours truly. Before that you heard from Rastafari with Taki.
Them feeding on my mind. Now I am a slave, I feed them paradise. Can't find happiness without money, they get trapped. Paper currency. Squatter with them call we in our we own a land. 3,000 acres for the Chinese man. Bulls can't live nowhere near Barbican. Him have a little money but wrong complexion. Him have a little money but wrong complexion. No black skin workers too much for the sight. No Jamaicans find the beach unless your skin color right. Wally tourists say about no US money. Them keep it for themselves and take it out the country. Working hard, I have a plan. 7 a.m. for the cash pot man. Just join the line and play it cool. Tomorrow you'll see you're just a fool. Tomorrow you'll see you're just a fool. A new Jamaica is what I see. A new Jamaica for you and me. A new Jamaica is what I see. A new Jamaica for you and me. Me put in a the politician. Me money buy less devaluation. Them say less cornflakes, more green banana. We say less hard and more Toyota. Green card and houses in a Miami. The American dream, a nightmare for we. Them come back just to get them dog and left with Bruce. Them leader, you a fraud. Them leader, you a fraud. IMF We have to take the bitter pill, cause of them it's a help and now we pocket it a kill. So why you are worried who me call Friday night? Where is your plan to fix our plight? The more we are vote, the more tax we are pay. Suppose we no vote, can we find another way? Me step out of the box to set me mind free. Tired to eat my brother, cause him a PNP. Cause him a PNP. My people have eyes, but still they cannot see them. Call we dirty labor right and dirty PNP. Wish evil upon your brother, then evil you will see. Cut them out of your life and deal with unity, unconditional love and positivity. It is written we are God's one family. Fear no one but God, the Almighty. The kingdom of heaven is inside of you and me. Inside of you and me.
Yeah, man, Sister Clarion, man. New Jamaica. Of course, to say we open the lines now. So, yeah, the man gone. Yeah, man. So you can call back in our bridging. So, as to say, we open the lines, the regular lines here on IRA FM. We'll go until 2 o'clock. And, of course, we'll play some dub poetry. Yeah, man. So, we are here now from Isachar. Thank you. Yeah, greetings.
Yes, Roger.
Yield.
Yeah, man.
Oh,
I think James I hear a long time in the talk to you, you know?
Saying?
Yeah, man. So, how you youth them, man?
Good, you know?
Yeah, man. Hear them up for me, here.
Saying?
Yeah, man. Me I say, you know, Psalms 24 say the earth is the Lord, you know?
Right.
You know which part man is woman of the earth?
If you know which part?
You know?
No, tell me no.
Yeah, man. I embrace them, you know.
I see.
Because if you when you stop suck your mother, you start eat on the earth, you know.
What kind of language that you come on the radio, man?
Just like how when it
Hey, what kind of language that you come up with the radio, man? You know, listen to me.
Sorry, man.
No, man.
I explain it as something, but like when you know, the cook start, him just after his mother, him just start eat with grass. You understand? Hello?
Yeah, man.
So me I say, me and one lady, you cancer, you know. So me I say, most of the man, them, when they go a party and thing, and them drink, and them go home to them woman, and them breath them, go to first with the alcohol, and so them get cancer. So me I really try to save the people, them, because them hurt them hurt, you know.
All right, sir.
The hurt of them body, you know.
All right, give thanks.
Yeah, man, take care.
Yeah. Yeah, man, I a charm, man. It's true, you know, every day we get up and cuss the politician them. Better we just stop cuss them now, yeah, man, and just thank them. Thank them for everything, man. Thank them, because, as him said, they will get spiteful. The more you complain, the more them get awful. So just thank them. Thank them for the promises this morning. Thank them for the promises yesterday. Thank them for all they have done. Yeah, we thank them. Yeah, man, King Butcher. Yeah, man, singing Played Cool on the Communal, out of Communal. Of course, you know, Communal was one of those retentions out of the Congo. Yeah, and of course, you know, when the Congo people, it's St. Thomas they came as the indentured laborers, but they came with their Communal music. And that was one of the music that was used during the Paul Bogle riots in St. Thomas. And that is why Communal is so strong in St. Thomas, because when the people from Congo came as indentured laborers, they went to St. Thomas. And Communal always have a message, you know. And this message is from King Bacho. Played cool. Yeah, played cool, youth, man. Played cool. Yeah, man, this is the cutting edge, you know. As we say, you know, anybody want a reason, you can do that, use that opportunity right now. Earlier we had spoken about some issues happening in Zimbabwe. So we see where some tensions are also boiling up in Angola. As we see where Africa's richest woman sacked from state oil company and fired by the president. So just a few months after being elected, Angolan President João Lourenço has removed the billionaire daughter of the former president from her role as chairman of the state-owned oil company Sonangol. businesswoman is Isabel dos Santos, is Africa's richest woman, the eldest daughter of Jose Eduardo dos Santos, who governed the country for 38 years. She was appointed to the chair of the Senegal Board of Directors by her father back in 2016. This is the latest effort by Lourenço to tackle corruption in the country. While many of Angola's citizens live in poverty, oil provides only 70% of Angola's income and almost all of its exports. So many see this as a huge power grab to weaken the influence of the Dos Santos family. So I guess we won't hear the last of that. We definitely know what is happening in Zimbabwe as we speak. So another African country, another thing is boiling up over there in Angola. Of course, we all know the history of Angola, the Portuguese. And of course, the Portuguese were the first set of people who really start some real conquering of lands in the Caribbean and lands in Africa. Yeah. Cutting edge here on IRE FM.
Children in the United States learned that Christopher Columbus discovered America in 1492. But since there were already millions of people living on the American continents when he arrived, what is Columbus's real importance in history? This video will show what really happened during his voyages between two worlds and how they helped shape the world we know today. In 1451, Columbus was born in the Republic of Genoa. There he began his sailing career, but in 1477 he was hired as a merchant mariner for King John II of Portugal. Portugal was gaining power on the seas, colonizing Atlantic islands and establishing trade with African kingdoms. By the 1480s, they found out the Indian Ocean was on the other side of Africa. This discovery gave them a fast and cheap trade route to the rich goods of Asia. During Portugal's rise in power, a group of European scholars thought the Earth was smaller than what was previously believed. This meant one could reach Asia by sailing west. Because of the newly invented printing press, Columbus read about these recent theories and was enthralled with the idea of sailing west for riches. He tried to get funding for an expedition from Portugal, but King John didn't believe in the small Earth theory. He then tried in France, England, and Spain with no luck until 1492 when the Spanish sovereigns, Ferdinand and Isabella, decided to help fund 3 ships for a voyage. They saw Columbus as a means to compete against Portugal's success. The Nina, Pinta, and Santa Maria set sail on August 3, 1492. After a stop on Gran Canaria, the rest of the trip took 5 weeks. On October 12th, land was spotted. It was an island, and at dawn, Columbus went ashore. Because he believed in the small Earth theory, Columbus thought he was near Japan. He called the natives of this island Indians because India was what many Europeans called Asia at the time, but the natives were really called the Taino. Trade began between the two parties, but it was clear that the Taino did not possess the fabled riches of East Asia. However, some of them wore gold as jewelry. Columbus was hungry for gold to bring back to Spain. He wandered around searching for a large amount of gold until the Santa Maria crashed into a reef on Hispaniola. Columbus left 39 men at the site to build a colony. He promised he would return for them and sailed back to Spain. When he arrived in Europe, Columbus was famous. He had sailed into the unknown and returned to tell the tale. He brought back many things to show the Spanish king and queen, including Tainos he had kidnapped. But he did not bring enough gold. So Ferdinand and Isabella equipped Columbus with 17 ships for his second voyage and named him governor of all the lands he discovered. Columbus was an excellent sailor. He found his way back to Hispaniola using his own keen navigation skills and kept the coordinates of his route a secret. When the fleet arrived at Hispaniola, they found out that the 39 men who were left there to build a colony had been killed by a local chief. They also found out the same chief had lots of gold on his land. Columbus led a crew into his territory and found a gold quarry. The chief was angered by the arrogance of these invaders, and soon fighting broke out. To intimidate the chief, Columbus captured 3 of his captains and beheaded them in public. This enraged the Tainos and disturbed many of the Spanish. To make things worse, there was soon no gold left to mine. Columbus sent letters back to Spain on a ship and exaggerated the amount of gold that was found. To produce more profit for the king and queen, Columbus suggested starting a slave trade. Without waiting for a response, he seized over 500 natives and sent them to Spain. Most of the remaining natives fought against this injustice, so Columbus unleashed terror on them. Once defeated, they were forced to pay tributes of gold to the Spanish. It was worse than slavery. People who didn't find enough were punished brutally. Forced to constantly look for gold, the Taino could not farm their lands anymore. Many escaped into the hills, only to be hunted down. During the first few years of the tribute system, 50,000 natives died. Columbus's brutal command made him enemies in the colony as well as in Europe. In 1496, he sailed for Spain to defend his actions to Ferdinand and Isabella. He left his brother Bartolomeo in charge of the colony until he returned. The king and queen listened to his defense and allowed him to return to Hispaniola in 1498. By now, the colony was a disaster. Bartolomeo was just as bad at governing as his brother was, if not worse. A rebellion had begun among the Spanish, and soon the king and queen sent a royal investigator to assess the situation. He put the Columbus brothers on trial. They were found guilty of numerous crimes against both the Spanish and the natives. The brothers were arrested and sent back to Spain. Christopher Columbus was no longer in charge of the New World. Now old and humbled, he was allowed one last voyage across the ocean, but he was not permitted to return to Hispaniola. He explored the Caribbean for 2 years before sailing back to Spain, where he died in 1506. We have learned that Columbus was ambitious, intelligent, and courageous, but he was no hero. His exploits in the colony were disasters for the native inhabitants, and their way of life was destroyed by his actions as governor. But his efforts led Europe to dominate the world through colonization and the expansion of kingdoms into empires. If Columbus did not succeed, someone else would have. But since his journey was the first to establish a link between the old world and the new, his name is remembered.
All right, yeah. Cutting Edge here on IRA FM. Yeah, you just heard that little feature there on Christopher Columbus. And we can't stop playing these things, you know. We continuously have to nail it in the consciousness of our people that this man never mean with no good. Yet they have holidays for him, especially all over the United States. Christopher Columbus, what he did when he came here. Crime against humanity, man. And of course, we know he was the first link between Europe and the then so-called New World. And, you know, what emerged after that was what we know known as Western civilization. But what has Western civilization done for the black race? All where I see it though is that the black race is at the foot of the table. So all the systems that have been put in place, you call them all the democracies and the capitalisms and the communisms and all those systems, all of them, Westminster systems, whatever system, all of the systems, them is just one thing common. Black people at the foot of the economic ladder, no matter what. So, we see where it starts from, and we see we still have a far way to go. And when we talk about reparation, we're talking about a serious thing. Many people might talk about, oh, reparation, this and that and that and that. But the European countries, England, Spain, Portugal, France, they all left us. And we're talking about, especially in Jamaica, they left us in a royal mess. Jamaica was the country that gave England its major push into Europe and eventually a global superpower. This little rock here we call Jamaica. The word factory was invented in Jamaica. That many people don't know. It is documented. The word factory was invented in Jamaica by what was happening on the plantations of the day and the whole sugar revolution and all those things and all the wealth that was accumulated by England in the 17th, 18th century was through Jamaica. And we have seen the royal mess that we are still in terms of the crime and the hatred for one another. And now we say reparation, they have to repair because they left us in a royal mess. They left us, they were here for 307 years. And when they left us in 1962, they left us with 80% illiteracy, despite extracting all of the wealth out of Jamaica into England, which put them into a global superpower to this day. And we know after all the prime ministers and the descendants who became prime ministers and big people in England, when you check them history, all of them, their four parents, grandfathers, great-great-great-grandfathers, and 6th generation after them, or before them, were all slave owners. Little London. How many people know that Little London got its name from the real London in England? Yeah. Savlamar was a big place for England back in the 18th century and so on. And that's why they had to get Little London, because it was... A lot of people don't know that. Little London. So, we say this to say that we are in a royal mess, and there are certain things, because of what happened that time, it remains in our DNA. Earlier I talked about all of the years then when there were fiercely fought wars in Jamaica. And that is why it has transcended down to this time where a Jamaican is just naturally aggressive. And you don't ramp with a Jamaican, you know. You don't ramp with a Jamaican, and they know that. That's why Jamaican have so much ratings. And that, you see, one other thing about Jamaica, you know, is that because of how hardened we became in this society, that is why them say we are good as the best and bad as the worst. Good as the best, when you talk about we give to the world people like Marcus Garvey, the father of black nationalism. Yeah. Then we gave the world Bob Marley, king of reggae, freedom fighter, universal, and still to this day one of the greatest freedom fighting songwriters of all time. And that Bob Marley is one of them man, they were 1,000 years from now, a time capsule will be opened with Bob Marley. He's the man. Then we gave Usain Bolt to the world. Yeah. Society that has hardened us to become either the good as the best or the bad as the worst. And then, of course, we have a big up with Haitian friends, them, with Haitian people. They led the way in terms of becoming the first nation to defeat a European powerhouse and gain them independence. And they suffered up to this day because of that, because when they gained their independence forcefully in 1804, of course it was leading up prior to that with Toussaint Louverture, and before that Bookman here from Jamaica who went across the channel and helped organize that ceremony that triggered the Haitian Revolution. Of course, they beheaded him, but he was the one who started the whole Haitian Revolution. So there's a connection between Haiti and Jamaica. And one of the things that they get in us and they perpetuate upon us is that we must hate the Haitians, friend them. If they should come here by boat, scan them and put them away and what you call the thing with them do us? Quarantine them and send them back. You know? These are just some of the things that have been perpetuated for us to hate one another. And that is why we remain at the foot of the economic ladder, because we're not organized.
Haiti is a very, 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 very important island in the Pan-African struggle. Haiti brings pride to Africans who know history. In 1803, Haiti was the most democratic country in the world. It was the only country in the world that did not allow slavery on its borders. The only country in the world in 1803. Once you properly understand this history, because you know these capitalist pigs have such a way of making it appear as if we've never done anything as Africans. We don't know democracy. And we don't know democracy. In 1803, Africans gave the freest world, the freest nation to the entire world. The only country in the world that did not allow slavery was Haiti. And not only did not allow it, but the only country in the world that put its natural resources towards fighting against any oppression was Haiti. Simon Bolivar, who liberated South America, anyone who knows the history knows it was Haiti that gave him the money, outfitted him with ships to start the struggle. And the Haitians demanded only one thing of Bolivar. When you free Venezuela, when you free Colombia, when you free Argentina, when you free Peru, free the slaves. The only condition of which they required of Simon Bolivar. This is history. You can't hide the truth, and if you know your history, you look for history, you will find it. You can imagine the threat that that Haiti imposed upon America since 1803. There was nothing that American imperialism, one other thing I must tell you. From this period, 1803, Haiti fought every major European power, the Americans, the French, the Spanish, the Germans, the Portuguese, all of them, trying to bring Haiti down, and not one of them could make Haiti renege on her democratic principles. On that country, there would never be on that territory a slave. Every man, every woman was free. You just make it to Haiti and you're free, no slavery. Everywhere else, there was slavery. Everywhere else. In the great America, they were, let's not talk about that. So anyway, you could imagine the threat that Haiti posed. American imperialism, all of its life, had only one objective, to bring those slaves back onto the plantation. There was only one objective, bring those slaves back to the plantation. And America, France, all of them could not bring Haiti back to the plantation. Even after slavery was made illegal throughout the Western Hemisphere and was even abandoned and emancipation proclamations were read everywhere, Haiti continued to be the guiding inspiration for Africans throughout the Western Hemisphere. It was not until 1915 that American imperialism could put the heels of the Marines on Haiti, install Papa Doc, a scum of our race, one who would bow down to the wishes of imperialism and rape his people without the slightest mercy. And since then, that's where Haiti has been, and that's where it is to this day. And it's certainly not Bill Clinton who's going to liberate it, just the masses of Africans.
Yeah, man. Home stretch here of the cutting edge tonight. It was a pleasure holding the fort, sitting in with you. Hope we passed on some valuable information earlier in the program. Of course, we kind of just take it easy right through to know we're standing by for the man Matrix. We're closing out the program. You just heard from Mr. Gang himself, the junior gang. Yeah. So we'll continue to monitor all of the issues. What is happening in Zimbabwe, Angola, all those little African countries that... There was one thing we never talk about, you know. Why, I'm a just member, you know. What happened to Tapa Whitmore down at Catchinall Saturday, where the national football coach was locked out of a football game. He was not prevented from entering the game. He was prevented, rather, from entering the game. And where I say, I've never heard of any other football coaches in Jamaica being locked out of a football game, yet in Jamaica. And it's 2 times this man get locked out of a football game, prevented from entering the game, irrespective of him not having an accreditation. But I'm sorry I never get to talk about it earlier, because I really didn't want to explore it. So, we're closing out now, you know. I want to give thanks to Sandra Shaw. Of course, she sat in with us tonight, and of course, she's the original producer for the program. But she keep a company right through. Give thanks. You don't know. Next time again, you'll go around the mic and we'll have some little dialogues, you know. Yeah. So